What if I told you there are plants growing right now, in backyards, in abandoned lots, in ancient forests, that contain more usable protein per gram than a chicken breast, require almost no maintenance, and once established, will feed you for decades without replanting? The modern food system never told you about them. Not because they don't exist. Because they don't fit in a supply chain. Stick around, because number 3 is the one that genuinely stopped me cold when I first found it. A leaf so dense with protein that NASA studied it for space travel. This channel exists to find exactly these plants. Quick pause. This channel is built on the information that should have been obvious but somehow never was, in gardening, in history, in the things we consume every day. If that's your kind of content, subscribe. We're pushing toward 1,000 subscribers before the month ends, and every person who joins makes the next video possible. Where are you watching from, and which of these have you actually tried? Drop it below, I read everything. Item 7. Chaya tree spinach. Most people have never heard of chaya. If you passed it on the street, you would call it an ornamental shrub, broad tropical leaves, woody stems, the kind of plant that blends quietly into a garden border without demanding attention. That invisibility is the first deception. Chaya, Nidoscolus aconitifolius, has been a primary protein source for the Maya civilization for over 3,000 years. Not a supplemental food. A primary one. The plant that fed one of the most architecturally and mathematically sophisticated civilizations in human history, growing in their kitchen gardens with zero commercial infrastructure required. Here is the hidden secret the modern grocery aisle never surfaces. Chaya leaves contain roughly 7 to 8 grams of protein per 100 grams fresh weight, comparable to eggs, alongside iron concentrations that nutritional researchers have found 3 times higher than spinach and calcium levels that rival dairy. A single mature plant produces harvestable leaves continuously for decades. The authority here is the archaeological record itself. Chaya cultivation sites have been identified across the Yucatan Peninsula dating back thousands of years, documented by ethnobotanists at institutions including the Universidad Autónoma de Yucatán, whose researchers have described it as among the most nutritionally complete perennial food plants identified in Mesoamerican agriculture. The practical instruction is almost embarrassingly simple. Take a cutting. Chaya does not reliably grow from seed. Plant it in well-draining soil with full sun and water it through the first season. After that, it largely manages itself. The leaves must be cooked before eating, as raw chaya contains hydrocyanic glycosides that neutralize completely with heat. Boil, sauté, blend into sauces, add to soups. One cutting. Decades of harvests. The Maya understood the math. Most modern gardeners have never been introduced to the equation. Would you add chaya to your garden? Drop your answer below. And wait until you hear what number 6 has been doing quietly in West Africa for centuries. Hey, if you are still here, genuinely thank you. This is exactly the kind of content this community exists for. The plants that worked before the supply chain, the nutrition that does not require a barcode. If you are finding this useful, go ahead and hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it tells the algorithm that this kind of forgotten knowledge is worth sharing. Subscribe if you haven't. We put out content like this regularly. Now, number 6. It has been feeding sub-Saharan Africa through droughts that destroyed every other crop. Here is why. Item 6. Bambara groundnut. You know the peanut. You have probably eaten it today in some form. But the peanut requires consistent rainfall, specific soil conditions, and a relatively stable growing season. Remove any one of those variables and the harvest fails. The Bambara groundnut, Vigna subterranea, was designed, by 10,000 years of agricultural selection across sub-Saharan Africa, for conditions where peanuts would not survive. Sandy, nutrient-poor soil. Irregular rainfall. Temperatures that defeat most legumes. The Bambara groundnut grows through all of it, fixes its own nitrogen from the atmosphere, and produces underground pods that store for years without refrigeration. Here is what the modern world forgot about it. Bambara groundnut seeds contain approximately 19 to 22 grams of protein per 100 grams dry weight, alongside a complete amino acid profile, meaning it delivers all 9 essential amino acids in a single source, a nutritional achievement that most plant proteins cannot match alone. Researchers at the University of Nottingham studying drought-resistant food crops have described the Bambara groundnut as one of the most nutritionally self-sufficient plants available to smallholder farmers in water-stressed environments. The implementation is straightforward and forgiving. Plant in full sun in well-draining, sandy or loamy soil after the last frost. Minimal fertilizer. The plant fixes its own nitrogen, so heavy feeding actually reduces yield. Harvest when the leaves yellow, typically 150 to 180 days after planting. The pods store dry at room temperature for years. Grind into flour, boil into porridge, ferment into the West African condiment called dawadawa. Bonus tip. The leaves and stems are themselves edible and protein-rich. The entire above-ground plant is nutritionally useful, not just the seeds. This is a crop that has sustained entire populations through conditions that broke modern agriculture. Most Western gardeners have never planted one. Would you grow Bambara groundnut? Tell us below. And number 5 will reframe something you thought you already understood completely. Item 5, amaranth. Walk through a neglected lot in late summer, and you will likely see amaranth without knowing it. A tall, upright plant with dense seed heads ranging from deep burgundy to bright gold, growing in disturbed soil with the confidence of a weed and the nutritional profile of a superfood. That confidence is warranted. Amaranth, genus Amaranthus, was a sacred crop of the Aztec civilization, consumed in religious ceremonies and exchanged as tribute alongside cacao and gold. When Spanish colonizers arrived in the 16th century, they recognized that amaranth was structurally central to Aztec civilization and prohibited its cultivation as a tool of cultural suppression. A crop so important to a civilization's identity and nutrition that banning it was considered a conquest strategy. Here is the nutritional case. Amaranth grain contains approximately 13 to 14 grams of protein per 100 grams dry weight, but the figure that separates it from most grains is its amino acid profile. Amaranth is one of the very few plant sources that contains lysine, an essential amino acid typically absent from grain proteins, at levels that researchers at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations have described as nutritionally significant for populations relying primarily on plant-based diets. Critically, the leaves are edible and protein-rich independently of the grain. You are growing 2 crops in one plant. Planting is uncomplicated. Direct sow after last frost in full sun. Amaranth tolerates poor soil, minimal water, and high heat. It grows aggressively in conditions where other crops struggle. Harvest leaves throughout the season. Allow seed heads to fully mature and dry before harvesting grain. Winnow, rinse, cook as you would quinoa or rice. Bonus tip. Let a few plants go fully to seed and drop naturally. Amaranth self-seeds reliably, effectively making it a perennial presence in your garden without replanting. Suppress it or eat it. The choice the Aztec civilization made is well documented. What would you choose? And number 4 grows in water, in a pot, on your kitchen counter, and still produces more protein than beef. Item 4, spirulina. This is the item that tends to generate the most skepticism when it appears on lists like this one. And the skepticism is understandable. Spirulina looks like algae, because it is. A blue-green cyanobacterium that grows in alkaline lakes. It has the aesthetic profile of something you clean off the side of an aquarium, rather than something you cultivate for nutrition. The skepticism does not survive contact with the data. Spirulina, Arthrospora platensis, contains between 55 and 70% protein by dry weight. Not 20%. Not 30%. Between 55 and 70, a concentration that makes it the highest protein density food source, plant or animal, that has been documented and verified by independent nutritional analysis. The protein is bioavailable, meaning the human body absorbs and uses it efficiently, and the amino acid profile is complete. The authority on this one includes NASA. Researchers working on long-duration space travel nutrition identified spirulina as a candidate food source specifically because its nutritional density per gram of mass is unmatched by any conventional food. The European Space Agency has conducted parallel research. These are not fringe endorsements. Growing spirulina at home is genuinely achievable. You need a container, a glass tank or food-grade plastic bin, alkaline water maintained at a pH between 8 and 11, warmth above 20 degrees Celsius and light. A starter culture is available from aquaculture suppliers. Harvest by filtering through a fine cloth, rinse and dry or consume fresh. The taste is strong. Blend into smoothies or mix into other preparations. Bonus tip. Spirulina grows fastest with 12 hours of light, making it one of the few food crops that performs optimally under artificial grow lights indoors year-round. a food that NASA studied for sustaining human life in space, is available as a homegrown crop. That information gap is extraordinary. Have you ever grown spirulina? Comment below, because number 3 is the one I promised you at the very beginning. And it grows on a tree. Item 3, moringa. This is the one. Morina oleifera, is a fast-growing tree native to South Asia that has been cultivated across tropical and subtropical regions for over 4,000 years. Ancient Ayurvedic texts reference it. Egyptian tomb paintings depict it. Traditional practitioners across India, the Philippines, and sub-Saharan Africa have used its leaves, seeds, and roots as both food and medicine across generations. Here is what stopped me cold when I first encountered the research. Morina leaves contain approximately 27 grams of protein per 100 grams dry weight, comparable to egg whites. They also contain all 9 essential amino acids, making them a complete protein source from a tree that, once established, produces leaves year-round in warm climates and requires virtually no inputs beyond occasional water during establishment. NASA listed morina as one of the most nutritionally complete foods identified in botanical research. The National Institutes of Health has published multiple reviews examining moringa's documented nutritional and phytochemical properties across peer-reviewed literature. Plant morina from seed or cutting in full sun, well-draining soil, in a frost-free climate. In cooler regions, grow it in a large container and bring it indoors for winter. It grows aggressively, up to 4 meters in its first year. Harvest young leaves and shoots continuously. Dry and powder for storage, add fresh to soups, blend into smoothies. Bonus tip, morina seeds purify water. Drop a crushed seed into turbid water, and it causes suspended particles to clump and settle, a function documented in both traditional practice and modern water treatment research. A tree that feeds you protein requires almost nothing and purifies water. Number 2 will reframe something much closer to home. Item 2, winged bean. Most gardeners who encounter the winged bean for the first time think they are looking at a decorative vine. The seed pods are ribbed with 4 distinctive longitudinal wings, architectural, almost ornamental, climbing a trellis with the visual ambition of a flowering plant rather than a food crop. Every part of it is edible. That is not common knowledge. That is the hidden secret. Winged bean, Saphocarpus tetragonalibus, produces edible leaves, edible shoots, edible flowers, edible pods at multiple stages of maturity, edible seeds both fresh and dried, and edible tubers that form underground and contain protein concentrations comparable to soybean. A single plant, 1 trellis, and you have a complete food system producing across multiple harvest windows through the entire growing season. The protein figures are significant. Dried winged bean seeds contain approximately 29 to 34 grams of protein per 100 grams, higher than soybean, higher than chickpea, higher than lentil. The National Academy of Sciences published a landmark report in 1975 describing the winged bean as having the potential to do for tropical agriculture what soybean had done for temperate agriculture, and specifically flagged its complete amino acid profile as exceptional. That report was published 50 years ago. The winged bean remains almost entirely unknown outside Southeast Asia and Papua New Guinea. Grow winged bean in full sun, warm temperatures above 18 degrees Celsius, with a sturdy trellis to climb. It fixes nitrogen from the atmosphere, improving your soil while it feeds you. Direct sow after last frost. Begin harvesting young pods at about 60 days. Allow later pods to fully dry on the vine for seed harvest. Bonus tip. The tubers, harvested after the vine's first full season, taste remarkably similar to potato and contain 15 to 20% protein. A nutritional profile no potato can match. A vine that produces leaves, flowers, pods, seeds, and protein-rich tubers, all from one plant. The modern gardening world has largely ignored it. Would you grow one? Number 1 is the reason this entire video exists. Item 1, hemp. Here is the truth that will genuinely stop you in your tracks, and the reason I started researching this topic in the first place. Hemp, Cannabis sativa L., was one of the first crops cultivated by human civilization. Archaeological evidence places hemp cultivation in China as far back as 10,000 years ago. It clothed people, built rope, made paper, and fed people across millennia on every inhabited continent. Then, in the 20th century, regulatory decisions entangled hemp with its psychoactive relative, and a food crop that had sustained human civilization for 10,000 years became legally inaccessible to most farmers and home growers in the Western world for several decades. The nutritional profile was buried with it. Hemp seeds contain 31 to 35 grams of protein per 100 grams, with a complete amino acid profile including the perfect 3-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids that nutritional researchers describe as optimal for human health. The protein is among the most bioavailable of any plant source. The University of Manitoba's Department of Nutritional Sciences has published research specifically examining hemp protein's digestibility and absorption rates, with results that position it favorably against soy and whey. Hemp grows in almost any climate, in poor soil, with minimal water, and reaches full seed maturity in 70 to 90 days. It is legally cultivable for food production in most countries and many U.S. states under licensed low-THC varieties. Plant in full sun. Harvest when seeds are firm and the lowest leaves yellow. Bonus tip: hemp is a phytoremediator. It actively draws heavy metals and toxins from contaminated soil. Growing it improves the ground it occupies. 10,000 years of agricultural history. Several decades of suppression. And it is available at your local seed supplier right now. Chia, the Maya's perennial protein tree. Bambara groundnut, the drought survivor. Amaranth, the crop that empires suppressed. Spirulina, the food NASA chose for space. Morina, the complete tree. Winged bean, the full system vine. Hemp, 10,000 years of history in a seed. Together, these 7 plants represent a single idea: that food security was never supposed to require dependence on a supply chain. It required knowledge. The knowledge existed. It still exists. The modern world did not improve on it. It just forgot it, and then built an industry to fill the gap the forgetting created. Now you remember. If this is the kind of knowledge you've been looking for, subscribe. We cover the methods the mainstream skips, the history the industry prefers you forget, and the science that changes how you see ordinary things. Leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Tell me which method you're trying first. I read every single one. See you on the next one.